he fought a cult with card tricks. Rick Allen Ross stood at the edge of the darkened auditorium, the audience's murmurs rising and falling like the ebb and flow of an unseen tide. At 8 p.m., the spotlight would hit him, and with it, he would begin his carefully orchestrated performance, the sleight of hand, the tricks of illusion, the art of distraction. But tonight, the stakes were higher than ever. It wasn't just a show. It was a covert mission. The cult was watching. They didn't know it, but they were the ones being watched. For Rick, the illusion wasn't just about tricking the eye. It was about saving lives. It was 1988 when Rick first infiltrated the so-called Church of the Final Judgment, a small but fanatical group that operated out of a compound on the outskirts of Los Angeles. The cult had a dangerous reputation, one built on manipulation, isolation, and brainwashing. Members were drawn in by promises of spiritual enlightenment and the chance to escape from the world's chaos. But what they found was far darker: mind control, extreme isolation, and psychological torment. Their leader, a man with the charisma of a snake oil salesman, had convinced them that they were part of a divine mission. For most, escape was impossible. But for Rick, a stage magician who had spent years mastering deception, nothing was impossible. The first time Rick stepped onto the compound, he knew that his skills would be tested like never before. He wasn't there for a performance. He was there to rescue people who couldn't escape on their own. His plan was simple: use the tricks he knew, the ones that fooled the eye and manipulated the mind, to infiltrate the group, gain trust, and guide vulnerable members out. His tools weren't weapons or force. They were illusions, sleight of hand, and the psychology of perception. By 9 a.m. the next morning, Rick had already begun his work. He blended in easily, his years of experience in entertainment giving him the ability to move in and out of groups without drawing suspicion. The cult's members were eager to accept him, a stranger who seemed to have a natural charm, a man who could entertain and captivate with nothing more than a deck of cards or a coin. But what they didn't realize was that Rick wasn't performing for their amusement. He was studying them. He was learning their vulnerabilities. Most importantly, he was waiting for the moment when he could make his move. It didn't take long. Within days, he had identified the key players in the group, the ones who were most vulnerable, the ones whose minds were most malleable. They were the ones he focused on, slowly earning their trust with subtle illusions. A card trick here, a disappearing coin there, small magic act that made their world seem a little less rigid, a little less controlled. As Rick's performances grew more elaborate, so did his influence. His tricks didn't just fool their eyes, they opened their minds. They began to question the absolute authority of their leader, if only for a moment. But it wasn't enough to simply entertain. Rick had to get inside their heads, to challenge their reality in ways that couldn't be undone. At 3 p.m., one afternoon, he staged a demonstration, a trick so simple, yet so profound, that it would reverberate through the hearts and minds of the cult members. He took an object, something personal from one of the most trusted followers, and made it vanish. Not through any typical magician's sleight of hand, but through psychological misdirection. He had them focus on a single detail, the way his hands moved, the slight twitch of his fingers. But while they were distracted, Rick altered their perception. The object disappeared in plain sight. The room fell silent. For a moment, Rick felt the weight of what he had just done. This wasn't just a trick. This was a challenge to their belief system. The cult leader, a man who had relied on control and manipulation, had no way to explain what had just happened. For the first time, his grip on his followers faltered. But Rick wasn't done. He knew the illusion wasn't enough. He had to plant the seed of doubt, the idea that there was more to life, more to reality, than what the leader had preached. At 5 p.m., the real breakthrough came. One of the members, a young woman named Emily, approached Rick. She had been one of the most devoted, but something in her eyes had changed. She wasn't asking for magic tricks anymore. She was asking for an escape. But the escape wasn't just physical, it was mental. She was trapped inside a prison of beliefs that had been instilled in her by the cult teachings. Her eyes begged him for a way out, a way to break free from the years of manipulation. And Rick knew that magic wasn't just about deception, it was about freedom. By 8 p.m. that evening, Rick had gathered a small group, the ones most receptive to his influence. He had used every trick at his disposal, every sleight of hand, every illusion to create cracks in the walls that had been built around them. But it wasn't just about escape. It was about reprogramming their minds, showing them that there was more to life than the world they had been told was real. They weren't just following a man, they were following an illusion. And Rick, the magician, was the one who had shown them the truth. The escape wasn't easy. The cult was watching, always vigilant, always suspicious. But Rick's magic was more than just tricks. It was a map, a guide to freedom. Slowly, members began to slip away, one by one, drawn to Rick's illusion of safety. And with every escape, the power of the cult leader began to crack. By midnight, Rick had orchestrated one of the most daring breakouts in history, using nothing but the power of his mind, his sleight of hand, and his knowledge of human psychology. But the mission wasn't over. Even as Rick watched his friends slip away into the night, he knew that he had only just begun. The battle for their minds would continue, but he had proven something undeniable. That even in the face of the darkest, most dangerous systems of control, there were ways to break free. Sometimes all it took was a card trick. In the years that followed, Rick would go on to help dozens of others escape from cults. His reputation growing as a man who fought brainwashing with nothing but illusion and empathy. But the truth of that night, the night he fought a cult with card tricks, would always haunt him. He had done the impossible. He had used deception to bring about a kind of freedom that no one had ever imagined. And though the world would never know the full extent of his secret war, Rick Alan Ross would always remember the moment when he realized, sometimes the greatest magic is not what you make disappear, but what you help others to see.